Hello, Undead and Undertakers. My name is TV's Guy, and turns out there's a remaster of Demon's Souls, or rather a full remake, on the horizon, coming from Bluepoint Studios, the same people who handled the apparently excellent Shadow of the Colossus remake a while back. It got announced for PS5, and it seems to be an exclusive to that thing, and since I have a bit of a Dark Souls series running on this particular channel, I figured it was probably appropriate to take a look at the trailer, because I have never played Demon's Souls. It was PS3 exclusive back in the day, and while I had a PS3, I didn't really know about Demon's Souls except as like something someone told me. It was really stupid and super hard, and you died all the time, and it wasn't any fun, so I never touched it, which is why my first exposure to the series happened with Dark Souls, which I imagine is a lot of people's story. So I figured I'd take a look at the trailer and talk a little bit about both Demon's Souls and also, like, the series that I do, the boss designs of Dark Souls, which I hope you're all watching, because it's nice when people watch the stuff that you put a lot of time into making. So Demon's Souls, to the best of my understanding, is the progenitor of the Souls series. Like, it's the first one that really followed the formula that came to define the Dark Souls series, but it itself, to the best of my knowledge, is a successor to FromSoft's earlier title, the King's Field series. Like, it takes a lot of the same approach and aesthetic, ostensibly. At least that's what, gaming articles have read about the subjects, and, who knows. So I'm kind of curious about this, because, like, Dark Souls 1, one of the things that was brilliant about it, and one of the things that I ended up focusing on, was that Dark Souls 1 had a rather strong meta-narrative, which when I started out the series, I didn't really know that. When I started out, I didn't really know anything. I was just, it's a big monster, hit you with a thing, and it's a monster, and it looks like a thing that's a monster. I was a little bit lost, I feel like, in terms of, I just kind of analyzed the character designs as, hey, these are just cool monster designs. But as the series went on, and I got more and more into the lore, I started getting more and more of a sense of, hey, hang on, there's actually some pretty interesting themes going on underneath all of this. And that's something that picked up even more in Dark Souls 2, if you've been following through my playthrough of that, where I've really zeroed in on this specific idea of the kinds of themes that I feel like the game has, and talking about meta-narrative and broad thematic arcs and stuff like that. Which is something like people have suggested multiple other games for like a boss designs series kind of thing to go through, for example, like Final Fantasy games and stuff like that. But the thing that's unique about Dark Souls, and the thing that's allowed my series to become what it is now, like as I'm nearing the end of Dark Souls 2 slowly, is that the Dark Souls series specifically has such a strong focus on like doing its world building in the incidentals, like not just with the item descriptions, but with the character designs of the bosses. Like, they themselves are very obviously and intentionally designed to communicate certain ideas and stories, and that's not always the case. Like, lots of video games design their bosses on rule of cool, like, this is a cool monster that we've put here, and that's the point, which is fine. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it means that Dark Souls, as it turns out, is a series that's uniquely well-suited to exactly the kind of series that I ended up making with the boss design series, which is why I'm curious about Bloodborne, if that will lend itself to that kind of reading as well, and which is why I'm curious about Demon's Souls, because I have played, how many, 30 minutes of Demon's Souls? I downloaded a PS3 emulator, and I got to run, because like I wanted to look into, like, can I actually run this goddamn thing on an emulator? And I got, like, I came to the first, I don't think it was actually meant to be a real boss, because it feels like it was an enemy that was just designed to murder you, to teach you about the respawning system. Because I went in and fought him, and then I woke up in a completely different location. So that's about as much as I've seen of Demon's Souls originally, and I really don't remember the character design of that boss. I just remember he was big, and he had a big weapon, and he killed me really fast, and it was annoying, because I couldn't figure out the dodge timing. So I'm curious whether Demon's Souls like has that same ethos, and especially given like presumably with the remake, Bluepoint, to the best of my knowledge, were extremely faithful in their Shadow of the Colossus remake, and I'd imagine they'd be the same thing with Demon's Souls. So what I'd be curious about with this game is, does it maintain from the thing that started with Dark Souls, and which I think got much stronger with Dark Souls 2, that thematic through line in its character designs, in its boss designs, in its world design? Like, does it have that same aesthetic approach to those things, or does it go with Rule of Cool? And looking at the trailer, Rule of Cool feels like, because also it's a trailer, it's supposed to show off all the cool stuff, but Rule of Cool kind of seems to be the order of the day, at least insofar as I'm interpreting these things to be bosses correctly. Like, we start with this thing, this giant manta ray in the sky that spits out smaller manta rays, which is like, that's a sea monster aesthetic, and we've got a little bit of sea imagery going on also in this trailer. I believe we cut to a shot of a beach with people wandering on it, which gives me a little bit of that Cthulhu Shadow over Innsmouth, like that Dagon, that kind of specific vibe. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Like, there is ocean imagery going on here, like images of a flooded world, which is imagery that FromSoft would play with again later in the 2 Dark Souls games. A lot, actually. I should probably talk more about the role of the sea thematically. And then, like, we see... I don't know if this guy's a boss or he's just, like, a regular big-ass enemy who's gonna kill you. But, again, like, we have this manta ray thing. Okay, sea monster kind of thing. But then we have this guy who's like, oh, he's a skeleton, kinda? He's got this shark mouth around the collar of his neck, which again suggests ocean imagery to me, but also he's a big skeleton warrior, except he's not a skeleton. He's got some kind of body that is adorned with bones, but is not a skeleton underneath, which... but he does have multiple eyes, which... Or does he? I can't actually tell. And then we cut to something much more classically Soulsy, which is giant dude with armor and sword, and we have this crumbling ruin of an old kingdom, clearly like overgrown with vines, and we have this gleaming knight in shining armor with his shield slightly rusted at the bottom, defending it, which is much more like classic Soul stuff. And then we get here into an undead underground crypt, which again, familiar territory for me after having played Dark Souls 1 and 2, where again, presuming this guy is a boss, this feels more like Rule of Cool design to me than anything specific. Like, and that's the thing, is like, I'm seeing a bunch of different imagery employed here, but I'm not immediately spotting a theme, because again, from ocean imagery to my dude with fire, which makes me think, okay, so maybe there's elemental imagery, because like maybe we have ocean monsters, and we have this dude who's doing like a wind thing, maybe? Kind of vaguely looks like that. Then we have fire. Is that what's going on here? So I'm curious about that. That's what I'm curious about when it comes to Demon Souls. Because here we have like a like Total Attack on Titan thing. And this dragon guy is like, I can see the idea, maybe there's a crown thing going on with a multi-pronged horns he's got on his head. And he's got a mouth within a mouth, which like greed, consumption, many eyes. This is hard to parse without the context of the environment. And that's part of the point I wanted to make with this video, by the way, is because, like, I'm closing in on the end of Dark Souls 2, and much as it happened when I was about to start up Dark Souls 2, I've got a lot of people asking me with concern about, like, but when you start to do Bloodborne, you're gonna have to edit an intro to the series, right? But then you're gonna see all the cutscenes, right? And then you're gonna get spoiled on all the bosses, right? And it's like, sorta, kinda. I'm gonna get spoiled on the bosses in Bloodborne the same way that I got spoiled on the bosses of Demon Souls by looking at this. Which is, I'm gonna know sort of what they look like, but I'm not gonna understand their context. Which is the thing that I think that I do well, or at least I hope that I do well, with my series, as opposed to something like, I mean, I've never watched his videos, but opposed to stuff like people like Vatividia do, who are much more curators of the lore. Like, they find all of the missing pieces, connect all of the threads, and like add up all of the stuff that's there, and sort of try and like create a complete picture of the world, where what I do is I look at a very fractured picture of the world. I don't look at the lore wikis. I don't look at all the detail. I don't find all the items. Sometimes I don't fight all the enemies. Like, there's lots of stuff that I miss, but I try to create a reading an understanding of the game based on the snapshot, which is why I make a big deal out of, like, this is a blind run through Dark Souls 2, which a lot of people, like, I occasionally get comments from people like, yeah, sure, it's a blind run. Like, how did he even find that thing if it was a blind run? Like, no, it genuinely, as blind as it can be, people will never shut the fuck up about Dark Souls on the internet, so obviously you get spoiled about a few things. I know, for example, in Bloodborne, there's a guy called Father Gascoigne. Gascoigne? Is it supposed to be pronounced in French? I know that he's there, I know his name, and I know apparently that he's very hard to beat, but I don't know his character design because I've never seen him. I also know that there's a dude who puts like is it like a pyramid head hat thing he puts on, and he's like a character in the story, and he does that, and I've seen like a picture of him before, and a dude with like a cage on his head, but I don't have any context, much like I don't have any context for what's going on in this Demon Souls trailer, where I'm saying, okay, ocean imagery maybe, and is elemental, is it sea, is it Cthulhu, like much in the same way, even if I see the character designs, absent the context of the worlds, I don't really start to form a consistent reading. I don't really start to understand what's going on. There's the inevitable thing of, like, once I start to have context, like once I've played the game for 10 or 15 hours and I start to have an idea of, okay, what is this game trying to say? Obviously, knowing what future bosses look like can do something to influence that, but that's like, for me personally, I feel like that's fine. Like, yeah, okay, fine. There's like, maybe some of that gives me a little bit of forbidden future knowledge that helps a little bit. But in my opinion, it doesn't really change things too much. I don't think it compromises the premise of a blind run through the game. So that was kind of the other point that I wanted to make with this video, is I kind of wanted to respond to that bit about, but how could you possibly call it a blind run when you have edited that intro? Well, because, like, so much of how I approach the game, so much of how I create the Dark Souls content that I make is informed deeply, deeply, deeply by context. I don't just read the designs as things in and of themselves, which is something that, like, people have occasionally criticized me for, which I think is fair enough, actually, that like, hang on, like, maybe just talk about the actual character design instead of going off on this wild external tangent about, oh, this thing is that's completely outside of the game. Just talk about the stuff that's inside of the game. And I feel like sometimes that's kind of fair enough, because I sometimes do go off on, like, wild thematic runs way into the distance without necessarily grounding it too much in the character design that I'm looking at. But that was kind of the point I wanted to make. And by the way, just to answer the question, because I get it a million times, even though I have answered it a million times, we're doing Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, then Dark Souls 3, and then after that, either we'll do Demon Souls Remaster, or we'll do Elden Ring. If Elden Ring comes out before I get to the Demon Souls Remaster, I'm jumping into that one immediately, because there I can have a true, genuine, 100% no bullshit blind run, where I cannot be spoiled on anything because no one knows anything. And that would be very, very, very exciting for me. If I would be able to jump into Elden Ring on day one when it releases and start making my series then, that would be exciting for me. Also because it probably would mean the series got better views. But if Elden Ring is not out by the time I finish Dark Souls 3, which, you know, early 2029, who knows? Then Demon Souls Remaster will be our next stop, our next destination. And it'll be interesting to look into the past of the Dark Souls series and see, like, how much of what it became was really present in the beginning. Whether, like, if it took not just a gameplay, like the gameplay DNA, but its approach to storytelling from the Demon Souls game. And it would also be interesting to see, like, how much they change with the remake, because again, Bluepoint ostensibly are had incredible fidelity in their remake for Shadow of the Colossus. So I imagine they probably wouldn't be changing too much. But I'd be curious. Like, I'm very curious about the Demon Souls remaster. And yes, we will be playing it at some point after Elden Ring, if nothing else. And I guess that's kind of all I wanted to say. Yes, I think I covered everything. So, hi, if you enjoy with like button, click thumb. If you've enjoyed this unstructured ramble about a game trailer and also a lot of stuff that was not about the game trailer, like, comment, subscribe, I guess. I don't really feel like this was a video that's, like, worth shilling for my Patreon for. So, like, comment, subscribe if you want to. And watch the boss designs of Dark Souls 2. Please. There's a premiere coming up, well, today as I'm recording this, because it's, like, 1 a.m. on the Friday. But in like, 19 hours, no, actually, 20 hours from when I'm recording this, not from when it goes up, but in 20 hours from when I'm recording this, God knows when it goes up, there's a premiere on this channel, new episode of Boss Designs of Dark Souls 2. Please come watch it. That's the thing I'm going to plug here. And also watch the rest of it, because I think I do really good work in it. It's some of my best creative work, I think. Yes. Yes. I don't want to shill for myself too much here, but if there is online content that you enjoy, people who make videos, especially smaller content creators, consider throwing $1 their way if you have one, because, like, that direct support makes such a huge difference. Like, it's literally the same as thousands of views on a video. Or, alternatively, if you feel like maybe content creators isn't the thing to spend money on right now, I'm also putting a link down in the description to a list of ways in which you can help the people who are currently protesting against, like, the sickening police brutality and racism that is happening in the justice system in the United States at the moment. Yes. That's such a downer to end a video on, but, you know, that's the world these days. Please, consider supporting them. Thank you very much for watching, and remember to wash your hands.